Throughout this year in 2024, the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, has given different warnings to the US economy and also the global economy at large, kind of like letting everybody know that, hey, we're not out of the woods yet with all of the problems that we're having globally with inflation, the cost of living. A lot of people are still suffering from this. And so the head of the IMF just came out and said that the high debt and the low growth remain major impediments to the global economy. So this tells us two things. Number one, that this is a global issue, guys. I have been talking about this on the channel for a while now. It's not like it's just us here in the US that are grappling with inflation and business slowing down. This is happening pretty much globally. Enough so where the IMF is getting involved and stepping forward and saying, hey, maybe we shouldn't celebrate and pat ourselves on the back just yet. So part of this most recent warning from the IMF details the fact that governments across the globe have essentially gotten too accustomed to borrowing with anemic growth in the local economies, which adds to the challenges of servicing that debt. You know, basically every major economy in the world now, the business model is print as much fake money as possible, run up the deficits, and have as much debt as possible to artificially grow today and sacrifice the potential growth into the future. And this is why so many people are worried about where the future of the global and the US economy is headed, because you can only borrow so much prosperity from the future before you just can't anymore. And then what happens next? So the IMF is saying when we look at the challenges ahead of us, the biggest one is low growth and high debt, and this is where we can and must do better. That's according to Kristalina Georgieva. She is the head of the IMF. Now, one thing I'm in disagreement with what she said, and I'm sure many people watching this channel will disagree as well, is that she kind of commended central banks across the world for taming inflation, whereas we know inflation has not been tamed at all. In fact, it's still a major problem and has been going back up lately. And other countries across the world have even worse inflation than we have here in the US. So we are far from a situation where inflation has been tamed. How about that view, huh? Can't beat that. But one thing she does acknowledge is that the impact of higher prices remains, and it's making many people in many countries feel worse off and angry. Like, it's not like you're feeling worse off. You actually are worse off than you were before inflation kicked in. Now, some people have criticized me and the channel, and I've seen in the comments, well, what about you, Michael? Aren't you doing better now than you were 4 years ago? Well, yes, I am, but I don't attribute any of that to the economy, guys. All of my success that I've had over the past 4 years has been due to nonstop grinding. You know, if there's one thing I can do, it's be consistent, especially here on YouTube, continuing making these videos. When I first started this channel, that was the goal, to remain consistent and keep it going no matter what. And I have done that. But a lot of people do not have the stamina and willpower that I have had to be able to continue doing this over the past 4 years. With the things that I've ran into, most people would have given up by now. And I'm sure there's a lot of other people who are like me that kind of just push and persevere no matter what, and they're doing great right now, guys. And also the fact that I work for myself makes a big difference. I'm not reliant on an employer to worry if I'm going to have a job next week, makes a big difference as well. But most people do have regular jobs or have more traditional businesses that rely on customers coming through the door, and those businesses and jobs are being lost and damaged right now by the current state of the economy. Another warning that the IMF gave to both the US and European Union is how putting all these tariffs, specifically on China, could impede global economic growth and activity into the future. And so what they're trying to say is that these tariffs may end up having just as much of a negative effect on the countries imposing them as the country that is being tariffed. And this is something I agree with. You know, she says here, tariffs usually are paid by businesses and consumers in the country that introduces them. So some people like to argue that that's not the case. but it really is the case. And of course, we can change where we buy things from. We can say, well, we don't want to pay those tariffs, and we can start, manufacturing goods or purchasing items from different countries that do not have tariffs imposed on them, and that's one way to avoid it. But of course, China makes pretty much everything that the US buys, so puts us in kind of a tight spot with that stuff. And one thing we got to worry about here in the US, and other countries have to worry about this too, but specifically us, because as of right now, we are the world's reserve currency, and we are massively abusing that privilege to the point where we may not be for very much longer if we keep going on the path that we're on. Here's a few things we need to look at. First of all, neither presidential candidate, no matter who wins, has vowed to reduce the federal deficit or the amount of debt that our country is taking on, guys. So unfortunately, whoever gets elected, this problem is going to continue to get worse. It's just a question of what the money's being spent on and how fast it accelerates and how much worse it gets from here. But no one's going to make it better. And we're already in a situation where the public debt as a percentage of GDP is very close to 100%. And the only other time in modern history that it's ever been close to that has been during World War II, guys. We're talking a major worldwide event where a tremendous amount of spending was necessary to win a world war. And we're just spending this kind of money just to stay afloat, just to tread water. And the scary thing is, no one seems to care. The faster that our government escalates towards this inevitable debt crisis, the less politicians and voters seem to care about any of this. This is also another reason why we have high interest rates right now. For example, the 30-year mortgage rate has been continuing to go up ever since the Fed cut interest rates, because the bond market doesn't believe that inflation is going away. And because we have this higher debt, that creates higher interest rates, because the higher debt that we have, the higher inflation we have. So investors need to see a bigger return on their investments in order for it to make sense, essentially. I mean, what investor wants to invest money in anything and get a lower rate of return than what inflation is? Nobody wants that. And especially if you feel like inflation is going to continue to go higher in the future, you're going to want an even larger return to compensate for that. I'm sure everybody's also wondering if the Fed is going to continue with their interest rate cutting cycle, given the fact that inflation is already starting to go back up even after just their first rate cut. And also you have interest rates on 30-year mortgages and auto loans on the rise as well after this cut. The only real argument for them to continue with the rate cuts is that the US government cannot afford to pay interest at these rates, and so therefore they're going to continue lowering the rates anyways and choose to go the route of just having higher inflation. That's just going to be the new norm. So once again, if that happens, then we were lied to, because they keep promising that they're going to get inflation back down to 2%, whereas that may have never been the goal and may not actually even be possible in this current economy anymore. We're also running the risk right now that these higher debt loads are going to cause slower economic growth over time, because investors are going to be buying US treasuries and will forego investing in other more productive projects that would create faster economic growth and better paying jobs. Nobody wants to invest their money in a project that may not work when they're just trying to preserve capital, guys. Everybody's just trying to make sure that their money doesn't get completely eaten away by inflation. And here we have the Fed already basically declaring victory, saying that they've already won this whole fight on inflation, which actually isn't true at all. I'm like of the mindset that it almost doesn't even matter what happens anymore. I'm just kind of along for the ride, chatting about it with you guys, and kind of just watching the ship go down, essentially. I mean, what else can we really do? All you can really do is protect your own personal finances and be ready for whatever comes next. Make sure that all your bills are paid and you don't have any debts, and that you can survive a long time in a bad economy. Other than that, what else can you really do? And it's not really a surprise when you hear about all these things, with inflation still being a problem, even the IMF warning that inflation is still a problem, that gold just reached yet another brand new record high. Okay, gold just jumped to a new record high of over $2,700 an ounce just the other day. It's showing no signs of slowing down. And that's because people who buy gold and people who buy silver realize that the shebang is over, man. The whole magic show of keeping the currency afloat and keeping inflation low isn't going to happen. And people who are smart know that, and they're investing more and more of their money into precious metals. And you can say whatever you want about this or feel however you want about it, but the reality is that year to date, gold is up over 30% and the S&P 500 is only up 22% this year. So assuming you had all of your money in the S&P 500 or all of your money in gold, you would actually be ahead this year with gold. You have central banks across the world right now that have been stocking up on gold for the past few years. The reason for that is because those central banks are starting to worry that we're going to have to maybe go back to some sort of a gold standard. That's what I think that they're doing. We've heard about the BRICS nations preparing to drop the dollar and have some sort of currency that's backed by gold into the future. And any central bank or country that's not thinking about this right now is extremely foolish, in my opinion. This is what civilization has always used as money, dating back as far as we can even tell. And it's what civilizations have always used to back any sort of currency as well, until we constantly repeat the same mistakes, print too much of it, make it worthless, have it go to zero, and have to jump back into having gold being real money. And somehow people fall for the same scam every single time. And the Fed lowering interest rates is probably just going to continue to push the price of gold up, because this is going to make inflation a bigger problem, and anybody who wants to protect themselves against inflation usually will buy gold and silver. I personally don't look at buying gold and silver as inflation protection. I look at it more as like wealth preservation. When you buy gold or silver, it just kind of leaves you with the feeling knowing that the money I just spent on these metals is going to be preserved at today's purchasing power. I'm no longer going to have to worry about the Fed or other foreign central banks, printing so much money to where now the cash that I once had is worthless. How about this, guys? Anybody who saw my grocery video the other day with all these ridiculous lies talking about how grocery prices are somehow magically cheaper today than they were in 2019? Well, Aldi and Walmart just announced that they're coming out with a very cheap Thanksgiving basket for this year in order to make sure they keep their loyal customers, especially through the holiday season. Check this out. Aldi is offering its lowest price Thanksgiving basket in 5 years. So for $47, shoppers can prepare a meal for 10 people, which comes out to $4.70 per person. Aldi even acknowledges in this story that grocery prices have gone up 50% since 2019, which kind of reassures my point that I made in that video the other day, is how many people have seen their pay jump 50% over the past 5 years? Raise your hand. I'm sure a few of you out there have, but the vast majority of people have not, guys, and that is the problem. And why is Aldi doing this? Well, maybe because they understand that their customers are strapped for cash right now, and offering a deal like this where they're essentially going to be probably losing money on it, if not just breaking even at the very least, will entice their customers to come back and buy groceries from them again, or buy more things besides just the Thanksgiving meal while they're there, and help boost sales. It's a very smart business deal, and it shows they can relate to what people are going through right now. Aldi's CEO recently also said grocery prices are still top of mind for customers, and 25% of US households are now shopping at Aldi. And they wanted to offer a traditional meal that doesn't force families and friends to scale back during the holidays, which I think is great, guys. I mean, it's a small thing, but it is just something that, if you've had a hard time affording just things that you used to be able to afford, and now being able to have a nice Thanksgiving dinner, that doesn't cost a lot of money. I mean, $47, it costs more than that just to go out to lunch now in many places, you know, and they're talking about feeding 10 people for Thanksgiving. So what's all included in this? They're including a butterball turkey with spices, gravy, rolls, mac and cheese, stuffing, and traditional sides like cranberry sauce and pumpkin pie. That is a lot of stuff that you get for just $47. Walmart, on the other hand, they have a similar deal going on, but it's definitely not as cheap as Aldi's. It's about $7 per person. You can purchase a meal that serves 8 for about $56. But it sounds like they're including more items. It doesn't give the whole list of things that they're including. It says there's going to be 29 items as part of this Thanksgiving basket, including turkey that can be purchased as low as 88 cents per pound. Check this out. Walmart says that the inflation-free meal will be available in-store and online with options for pickup and delivery. So it sounds like these grocery chains are very in touch with reality right now and what people are going through, unlike so many other businesses, unlike so many of our leaders and politicians that don't have a clue. And I know this isn't realistic, but it would be nice if some things could just go back to 2019 prices and stay that way. I know that businesses can't do that long term in order to continue making a decent profit, but man, wouldn't it be nice if we could just see prices on certain things go back to 2019 prices? Not everything, but some things that, you know, make a small difference in your life like this. And obviously their success is showing, guys, because Aldi is one of those places that's opening stores right now, not closing them like so many other businesses. In fact, they plan to open 800 new US stores and hire over 13,000 store and warehouse associates over the next year. And this is how you win customers in 2024, no matter what business you're in, if you ask me. It is offer something people want and need, guys. People want Thanksgiving dinner, people need food, and this is a combination of both. And if you can get a meal for that cheap to feed your family, this is probably going to go a long way for brands like Walmart and Aldi. So if you own a business, you should be thinking about things that you can offer at a discount right now to help drum up business and also increase customer loyalty for your business. So let us all know if this makes you want to continue shopping for groceries at Walmart and Aldi, if it gives you a favorable outlook on the brands moving forward. Just curious to know what people think about this stuff. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.